My student joined a gang. I tried to save him. Hello, dear friends. I'm Mr. Johnson. I've been teaching high school mathematics for 26 years, and today I need to share with you one of the most challenging and heartbreaking stories of my career. This is a story about a bright young man who got caught up in gang life, about the complex factors that drive kids toward dangerous choices, and about a teacher's desperate attempt to save a student from a path that could end in prison or death. It was September 2019 when I first met Marcus Williams, a 16-year-old sophomore who had just transferred to Washington High School in East Cleveland, Ohio. Marcus was a tall, lanky kid with intelligent dark eyes and a quiet intensity that immediately caught my attention. When he walked into my Algebra 2 classroom that first day, he carried himself with a confidence that seemed unusual for someone his age, but there was also a wariness about him, as if he was constantly assessing potential threats or opportunities. During those first few weeks, I was impressed by Marcus's mathematical abilities. He had a natural aptitude for numbers and could solve complex problems with an intuitive understanding that suggested real potential. When he chose to participate in class, his insights were sharp, and his questions showed genuine curiosity about the subject matter. But Marcus was inconsistent in his engagement. Some days he would be fully present, actively participating, and helping other students understand difficult concepts. Other days he would sit in the back of the classroom, hood up, barely responding when I called on him and clearly distracted by something outside of school. I learned from his guidance counselor that Marcus lived with his mother, Keisha Williams, in a small apartment in the Glenville neighborhood. His father had never been part of his life, and Keisha worked 3 part-time jobs, cleaning offices at night, stocking shelves at a grocery store on weekends, and doing data entry from home when she could find the work just to keep them housed and fed. Despite these challenges, Keisha was determined that Marcus would be the first person in their family to graduate from high school and maybe even go to college. She attended every parent-teacher conference, checked on his homework regularly, and made it clear that education was the family's top priority. Mr. Johnson, Keisha told me, during our first meeting, Marcus is smart, but this neighborhood, it's hard to keep kids focused on school when there's so much other stuff happening around them. I just need you to know that I support whatever you're doing to help him succeed. But around January, I began to notice changes in Marcus that concerned me. The most obvious change was in his appearance and possessions. Marcus had always dressed modestly, clean clothes, but clearly from discount stores and often the same few outfits rotated throughout the week. Suddenly, he was wearing expensive sneakers, designer jeans, and a gold chain that probably cost more than his mother made in a month. When I asked Marcus about his new clothes, he was evasive. My mom saved up, he said, not making eye contact. She wanted me to look nice for school. But I knew Keisha Williams, and I knew there was no way she could afford the kind of items Marcus was suddenly wearing. More concerning than the clothes was the change in his behavior and attitude. Marcus became increasingly disrespectful toward authority figures. Not just me, but all of his teachers. He would come to class late, disrupt lessons with inappropriate comments, and show a level of defiance that was completely different from the respectful, if sometimes distant, young man I had known earlier in the year. He also started missing school more frequently. At first it was just a day here and there, but by March, Marcus was absent 2 or 3 days each week. When he was present, he often appeared tired, as if he had been up all night, and he seemed distracted by text messages and phone calls that he would try to handle discreetly during class. Most troubling was the change in Marcus's social circle. The classmates he had been building friendships with were replaced by older teenagers and young adults who would pick him up after school. These weren't students from our high school, and they had an edge about them that made me uncomfortable whenever I saw them waiting by the school entrance. During a parent-teacher conference in April, I shared my concerns with Keisha, who broke down crying when I described the changes I had observed in her son. "I've been trying to talk to Marcus about what's going on," she said through her tears, "but he won't listen to me anymore. He comes home with money and expensive things, and when I ask where they came from, he just says he's taking care of business. I'm scared, Mr. Johnson. I'm scared he's getting involved with people who are going to hurt him or get him killed." "Have you considered contacting the police or social services?" I ask. "What am I going to tell them? That my son has nice shoes and won't tell me where the money came from?" They'll just tell me to be a better parent, or worse, they might arrest Marcus for something I don't even know he's done. Keisha's response reflected the complex relationship between families in neighborhoods like ours and law enforcement. Even when parents were desperate for help, they often felt like involving police would make things worse rather than better. Mrs. Williams, what if we worked together to try to reach Marcus? What if we could find ways to keep him engaged with school and show him that there are other paths to success? I'll try anything, Mr. Johnson. I just want my son back. Over the following weeks, I made various attempts to reconnect with Marcus and address whatever was pulling him away from his education. I offered extra tutoring sessions, suggested he join the math team, and even proposed that he help me tutor younger students who were struggling with basic math skills. Marcus was polite but uninterested in all of my suggestions. I appreciate it, Mr. Johnson, but I don't have time for that stuff anymore. I got other responsibilities now. You can't help me with this, Marcus said, and there was something in his tone that made it clear the conversation was over. By May, Marcus's attendance had become so sporadic that he was in danger of failing not just my class, but several others. More troubling than his academic struggles were the rumors I was hearing from other students and teachers about his activities outside of school. According to these rumors, Marcus had become involved with a local gang called the East Side Serpents, who controlled drug distribution in several neighborhoods around our school. The Serpents were known for recruiting young teenagers who needed money and were looking for a sense of family and protection. I didn't want to believe that Marcus had gotten involved with something so dangerous, but the evidence was becoming harder to ignore. The expensive clothes, the mysterious income, the new social circle, the attitude changes, all of it pointed to gang involvement. The situation reached a crisis point on a Tuesday morning in late May. I was setting up for my first period class when I noticed Marcus in the hallway, clearly agitated and speaking urgently into his cell phone. As I watched, he reached into his backpack and I caught a glimpse of what looked like the handle of a gun. My blood ran cold. If Marcus was bringing a weapon to school, it meant that whatever conflict he was involved in had escalated to a level that put everyone in the building at risk. I immediately called security and reported what I had seen, but by the time they responded, Marcus had left the building. I spent the rest of the day worried about what might happen. Myers to Marcus, to other students, to our school community. That afternoon, I made a decision that was probably against school policy and possibly dangerous, but felt necessary given the circumstances. I drove to Marcus's neighborhood to find him and try to intervene before something terrible happened. I found Marcus sitting on the steps of an abandoned building, still looking agitated and frequently checking his phone. When he saw me approaching, his expression shifted from surprise to wariness. "Mr. Johnson, what are you doing here? You shouldn't be in this neighborhood." "I'm here because I'm worried about you, Marcus. I saw what you had in your backpack this morning, and I think you're in serious danger." "Marcus, I've been teaching for over 20 years. I've seen smart kids like you get caught up in situations that destroy their lives. Whatever's happening, whatever you think you need to do, there has to be another way. You don't understand, Mr. Johnson. I didn't choose this. I needed money, and these people offered me a way to make it. But once you're in, you can't just walk away. If I don't handle this situation, people I care about are going to get hurt." "What situation? Maybe I can help, or maybe we can find someone who can help." Marcus laughed bitterly. "Help? You're a math teacher. You live in a nice house in a safe neighborhood. You don't understand what it's like to have to choose between paying rent and buying food, or to watch your mom work herself to death trying to keep you housed." "You're right, Marcus. I don't understand everything about your situation, but I understand that you're a good kid who's gotten caught up in something that's going to end badly, and I care enough about you to try to help you find a way out." Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and I could see him struggling with whatever decision he was facing. "There's a beef between my set and some guys from the west side. They disrespected our territory, and now there's going to be retaliation. I'm supposed to be part of it. It's not about money anymore, Mr. Johnson. It's about loyalty and respect. If I back down now, I'm a punk, and punks don't last long in this life." I spent the next hours sitting on those steps with Marcus, trying to help him see alternatives to the path he was on. I talked about his mathematical abilities, his potential for college, the pride his mother had, and his intelligence. I also talked about the reality of gang life, the high probability of prison or death, the way it would destroy his family, the fact that the people who were pushing him toward violence didn't really care about his well-being. Marcus, you said these people offered you a way to make money when you needed it, but what have they cost you? You're failing school. You're putting yourself in danger. You're breaking your mother's heart. Is that a fair trade? I don't know how to get out, Marcus admitted. Even if I wanted to, I don't know if they'd let me. Let's figure it out together. Let's talk to your mom. Let's see what resources are available. Let's find you a different path. That conversation on the steps was the beginning of a months-long effort to help Marcus extricate himself from gang involvement. It wasn't easy, and there were many setbacks along the way. The first challenge was Marcus's safety. Once he decided he wanted out of the Serpents, he became a potential target for retaliation. Gang members don't generally allow people to simply walk away, especially when those people have been involved in territorial disputes or have knowledge of illegal activities. With Keisha's permission, I contacted a community organization called Streets to Success that specialized in helping young people leave gang life. They connected us with a caseworker named David Martinez, a former gang member who had successfully transitioned out of that lifestyle and now worked to help others do the same. David was brutally honest about the challenges Marcus would face. Getting out of gang life isn't just about deciding you don't want to do it anymore, he explained. You have to completely change your social circle, your neighborhood, sometimes even your identity. And even then, there's always a risk that your past will catch up with you. The first step was getting Marcus out of the neighborhood temporarily, while we developed a longer-term plan. Through the Streets to Success program, we arranged for Marcus to stay with a host family in a different part of the city, at least until the tensions with the rival gang cooled down. Marcus was reluctant to leave his mother and his familiar environment, but the alternative was potentially deadly. Mr. Johnson, what if this doesn't work? What if I'm just delaying the inevitable? Marcus, the only inevitable outcome is the one you choose. If you choose to stay in gang life, you're right. Means to prison or death are almost certain. But if you choose a different path, there are possibilities we can't even imagine right now. The transition wasn't smooth. Marcus struggled with being away from his mother and his neighborhood, even though he knew it was necessary for his safety. He also had to deal with withdrawal from the adrenaline and sense of importance that came with gang involvement. But slowly, with support from David, his host family, and continued engagement with school, Marcus began to stabilize. He was able to finish his sophomore year, though with grades that reflected the disruption in his life. Over the summer, we worked on preparing Marcus for his junior year. This involved not just academic support, but also helping him develop new interests and social connections that could replace what he had lost by leaving the gang. When Marcus returned to school for his junior year, he was a changed young man. He wasn't the same carefree kid he had been before getting involved with the gang, but he was focused, determined, and committed to making better choices. His grades improved dramatically, and he became one of my most reliable students. He also started mentoring younger students who were at risk of making some of the same mistakes he had made. I want other kids to understand that gang life isn't what you see in movies, Marcus would tell them. It's not glamorous, it's not easy money, and it's not a family. It's a trap that's designed to use you up and throw you away. Marcus's involvement with gang life had one lasting consequence that continued to affect him throughout high school. Because of his previous associations, he was always under suspicion from law enforcement and school security. But Marcus learned to deal with these challenges with maturity and resilience that impressed everyone who worked with him. When police would question him about crimes in his old neighborhood, he would cooperate respectfully while maintaining his innocence. When former gang associates would try to contact him, he would decline their overtures without creating additional enemies. "They're saying I owe it to the set to help get revenge," Marcus told me during one of our regular check-ins. "They're saying that walking away was disrespectful to the guys who are still fighting." What do you think, Marcus? I think that's exactly the kind of thinking that keeps people trapped in cycles of violence. If I go back now, even for one job, I'll never get out again, and everything we've worked for will be wasted. Marcus's ability to resist the pull of his former life, even in the face of peer pressure and accusations of disloyalty, showed how much he had grown and how committed he was to his new direction. Marcus graduated from high school in June 2022 with a 3.2 GPA and was accepted into a community college construction management program. The ceremony was one of the proudest moments of my teaching career, not just because Marcus had succeeded academically, but because he had literally saved his own life by choosing a different path. During his graduation speech as a representative of students who had overcome significant challenges, Marcus talked about the importance of having adults who refuse to give up on young people, even when those young people are making dangerous choices. 3 years ago, I was heading down a path that would have ended in prison or death, Marcus said to the audience of families, teachers, and community members. But I had a teacher who saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself, and who was willing to risk his own safety to help me find my way back. Marcus continued, Mr. Johnson didn't just teach me algebra, he taught me that my life had value, that I had potential beyond what I could see, and that it's never too late to make better choices. Today, Marcus is in his second year of college and working part-time for a construction company that has already offered him a full-time position when he graduates. He still lives with his mother, who has been able to reduce her work hours because Marcus contributes to household expenses through his legitimate employment. Marcus also volunteers with the Streets to Success program, working with teenagers who are currently involved in gang activity and want to find alternatives. His lived experience gives him credibility with young people who might not listen to adults who haven't walked in their shoes. Mr. Johnson, Marcus told me during a recent visit, I think about that day you came to find me in my neighborhood all the time. I was so angry that day, so ready to do something that would have ruined my life. But you cared enough to put yourself at risk to try to reach me. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I've learned that gang life preys on kids who feel like nobody cares about them, who feel like they don't have any other options. When you showed up that day, when you spent time trying to understand my situation instead of just judging me, you proved that I did have someone who cared. Looking back on Marcus's story, I'm struck by how close we came to losing him to a lifestyle that destroys so many young people in communities like ours. It also requires adults who are willing to take risks, to venture outside their comfort zones and to maintain relationships with young people, even when those relationships are challenging or potentially dangerous. Since Marcus's graduation, I've worked with several other students who have been involved with gang activity or were at risk for gang involvement. Each situation has been different, but Marcus's story has provided me with a roadmap for how to approach these challenges with patience, understanding, and determination. Gang life is seductive because it offers immediate solutions to real problems. Solid, it provides money for families struggling with poverty, protection for young people who feel vulnerable, and a sense of belonging for teenagers who feel isolated or rejected by mainstream society. Helping young people leave gang life means helping them find legitimate ways to meet those same needs. For Marcus, that meant job training for financial stability, a supportive community through Streets to Success for belonging, and educational opportunities for long-term advancement. But it also meant having adults in his life who refused to give up on him, even when he was making choices that put himself and others at risk. Sometimes the most important thing we can do for young people is simply show up consistently and without judgment until they're ready to accept help. Marcus Williams taught me that every student has potential, regardless of the choices they've made or the circumstances they're facing. But realizing that potential sometimes requires extraordinary effort from the adults in their lives, effort that goes far beyond traditional teaching responsibilities. As educators, we can't save every student who gets caught up in dangerous activities, but we can create relationships that provide alternatives to destructive choices, and we can refuse to give up on young people even when they seem to have given up on themselves. Marcus's story reminds me why I became a teacher in the first place. Not just to teach mathematics, but to help young people see possibilities for their lives that they might not be able to see for themselves. Sometimes that means teaching algebra, and sometimes it means sitting on the steps of an abandoned building, trying to convince a teenager that his life is worth more than the temporary benefits of gang involvement. Every student deserves an adult who believes in their potential and is willing to fight for their future. Marcus Williams was lucky to have several such adults in his life, and I was lucky to be one of them. His transformation from gang member to college student and community leader proves that, with the right support and opportunities, young people can overcome even the most challenging circumstances. The work isn't easy, and it doesn't always succeed. But when it does, when you see a young person choose life over death, hope over despair, education over the streets, it reminds you that teaching is about much more than academic instruction. It's about helping young people discover who they can become.